Hi, this is SOSF. Alright, so check this out. We're gonna get a little weird today. Pull up a stool, grab a drink, whatever you do, because this is one of those things that just kinda gets its hooks in your brain and doesn't let go. We're always talking about the future, right? AI, space travel, what the world's gonna look like in 100 years, 200 years. But what if the future was talking back to us? I was reading this crazy document, this deep dive. They call it the Chronos Protocol. It's a breakdown of this one insane idea. What if people in the future, way down the line, figured out how to send a message back to us? Not a person, not a DeLorean hitting 88 miles per hour. Just a text. A simple, plain text message that pops up on a screen somewhere. That's it. Sounds like sci-fi. And yeah, it is. But when you start peeling back the layers, man, it stops being just a movie plot and turns into this massive philosophical and strategic mind-bender. It's not about the technology, because who knows how they'd do that? Wormholes, quantum entanglement. No, this is about the decision. The act itself. Should you do it? And if you do, what the hell do you say? Because once that bottle is opened, you can't put the genie back in. You're messing with the source code of reality. The first thing you gotta wrap your head around, and this is the big one, is that before you can even think about sending a message, you have to know what kind of universe you're living in. And according to these thinkers, there are really only two possibilities, and they are polar opposites. On one side, you've got what they call chaos theory. We all know this one as the butterfly effect. It's a simple idea that's terrifying when you really think about it. Some scientist, Edward Lorenz, was running these weather simulations back in the day. He ran one. Then for the next one, he rounded off one of the starting numbers by a tiny, insignificant amount, like less than a rounding error on your taxes. And what happened? The long-term forecast wasn't just a little different. It was a completely different universe of weather. A sunny day became a hurricane. Now, apply that to human history. That's a weather system with 8 billion variables. So, you're in the future, and you think you're going to be a hero. You're going to send a message back to, say, 1914 to some archduke's driver and say, "Hey man, maybe take a different street today." You think you're preventing World War I, but you have no idea what you're actually doing. Stepping on that one butterfly, sending that one text, could cascade. Maybe preventing that war leads to a different, worse war 50 years later. Maybe the guy who would have cured cancer in 1950 is never born because his grandparents met during that war you just stopped. You're throwing a rock into a pond, but you can't see the ripples. And those ripples could turn into a tsunami that washes away your entire existence. The future you're trying to protect might blink out of existence because of your good intentions. That is a heavy, heavy burden. It's the ultimate gamble. And the stakes are everything. But then you've got the other side of the coin. It's called the Novikov self-consistency principle. This one is even trippier in a way. It basically says that the past is fixed. It's done. It's a single, solid block of space-time, and you can't change it, period. It's like a movie that's already been shot, edited, and released. You can't go back and change a line of dialogue. So, if you send a message to the past, that message was always there. It was always part of history. You're not changing anything. You're just playing your part in the script that was already written. This solves all those paradoxes we love from the movies. The famous grandfather paradox, right? You go back in time to kill your grandfather before he meets your grandmother. Under chaos theory, who knows what happens? Maybe you vanish in a puff of smoke. But under this self-consistency idea, it's impossible. You'd try to shoot him, but the gun would jam. Or you'd slip on a banana peel on your way to his house. Or a bird would poop in your eye at the exact wrong moment. The universe wouldn't send a lightning bolt to stop you. It would just conspire in the most mundane, normal ways to make sure you fail. Your free will is an illusion in this context. You're just a cog in a machine that's already running. So, if you're in the future, your entire strategy depends on which of these two realities you think is true. Are you a god who can rewrite reality but with totally unpredictable consequences? Or are you just an actor in a play that's already been written, delivering the lines you were always meant to deliver? That's the first question, and you'd better be damn sure of the answer before you hit send. Let's say you figured that out. Now comes the next question. Why? What's the motivation? Who in the future is making this call? And what do they want? This isn't some benevolent, unified future humanity from Star Trek. It's gonna be people. And people are complicated. They've got their own agendas. The document breaks this down using game theory, which is basically the mathematics of strategy. It's like a massive, high-stakes poker game, where the players are different factions in the future. You can put their motivations on a spectrum. At one end, you've got pure altruism. These are the benevolent custodians. They're looking back at our history, all our wars, our plagues, our famines, our dumb, stupid mistakes, and they feel for us. It's like looking at old family photos of your ancestors struggling. and you just want to help. They have all of our data. Every book, every diary, every dumb tweet. They know our suffering intimately. And maybe that empathy drives them to act. They want to send back the cure for the Black Death, or the principles of sanitation, or a warning about the asteroid that's coming. Their goal is to make the past a better place, to ease suffering. It's a noble goal, but it's based on the terrifying assumption that they know what's best, and that they won't screw it up because of that whole butterfly effect thing. Then you swing all the way to the other end of the spectrum. Pure egoism. Selfishness. These are the timeline predators. They don't give a damn about our suffering. They look at the past as a resource to be exploited for their own gain. Why send back a cure for a disease when you can send back last week's winning lottery numbers to your great-great-grandfather? Why prevent a market crash when you can tell your ancestors exactly when to sell high and buy low, setting up your family dynasty for centuries? This is information warfare on the grandest scale imaginable. A faction in the future could try to undermine a rival faction by messing with their historical roots. It's corporate espionage played out across millennia. They're not trying to save the world. They're trying to rig the game so they come out on top in their own time. They see the butterfly effect not as a risk, but as a feature. A tiny surgical insertion of information could create a massive advantage for them. And of course, most people would probably fall somewhere in the middle. Maybe they want to help, but only in ways that don't risk their own existence. Or maybe there's a third option entirely, one that's almost colder than the selfish one. Pure, scientific curiosity. The academics, the historians and physicists who see the past as the ultimate laboratory. They don't want to help or harm. They just want to poke it with a stick and see what happens. What if we give the formula for gunpowder to the ancient Romans? Let's run the experiment and see. They're not driven by morality, but by a thirst for knowledge, and that might be the most dangerous motivation of all. So the final message that gets sent, if one ever does, probably wouldn't be this pure, clean thing. It would be the result of a massive political battle in the future. A compromise. A message that's been watered down by committees and risk-averse bureaucrats, or maybe a message that's trying to do 2 or 3 contradictory things at once because different factions got their hands on the keyboard. That might explain why, if we ever got a message, it might seem completely schizophrenic. Okay, so they've decided on their why. Now for the what and the who. What, exactly, do you send? And who do you send it to? This is where it gets into the tactics, the real nuts and bolts of temporal information warfare. The content of the message is everything. A simple warning is one thing. A massive tsunami will hit the coast of Japan on this date. Actionable, direct, but that's a blunt instrument. A more sophisticated approach would be to send knowledge. Not just a fish, but the instructions for building a fishing rod. You could send the basics of germ theory to the Middle Ages and prevent centuries of plagues. Or you could send research on AI alignment to the engineers of the 20th century to prevent a robot apocalypse in your own future. That's a scalpel. You're not just changing an event, you're changing the trajectory of human development. Or you could go even deeper. Forget science and technology. What about philosophy? What if you sent the works of John Locke on individual rights and liberty back to the architects of the Roman Empire? Or sent the Universal Declaration of Human Rights to the guys writing the Magna Carta? You could fundamentally alter the moral and political evolution of the entire species. That's playing the long game. And then there's the dark side, disinformation. You could discredit a key scientist. You could plant false information to start a war, or to stop one. You could send a message designed to create a specific religion, a belief system that serves your long-term goals. Knowledge is power, and a message from the future is the ultimate form of knowledge. But who do you send it to? You don't just broadcast it on the radio. That would be chaos. No, you'd have to pick your target. And the future, with its vast databases, could create a perfect psychological profile of every person who has ever lived. They'd know who to pick. You wouldn't send a complex scientific formula to a politician. You'd send it to a brilliant but overlooked scientist who has the motivation to understand it. You wouldn't send a call for peace to a warmonger. You'd send a message that plays on his paranoia and fears, confirming his biases to get him to act in the way you want. It's weaponized psychology. You find the perfect lever, the one person who can move the world, and you give them the perfect push. Or maybe you don't send it to a person at all. People die. Their messages get lost. If you want to send a message that lasts for thousands of years, you have to embed it in something durable. Something that copies itself and spreads. What does that sound like? You embed it in a culture. You make it the foundation of a religion, or a core national myth. You create a story so powerful that people will preserve it, protect it, and pass it down for generations. The 10 Commandments, delivered by a time traveler. That's how you achieve civilizational scale change. The thought is just staggering. Now, let's flip the camera around. Let's stop thinking about the people in the future and their grand plans. What happens on our end? What happens the moment that message arrives? Absolute, unfiltered chaos. That's what happens. First, There's the credibility crisis. Imagine you, right now, get an email that says, "I'm from the year 2472. You need to do this." What's your first reaction? You'd think it's a prank, or a scam, or that you're losing your mind. In our world, especially now, we don't trust anything. We rely on heuristics, mental shortcuts, to decide if something is real. Does it come from a reputable source? Can I cross-reference it with other sources? A message from the future fails every single one of those tests. It has no reputation. There are no other sources. So, what happens? It gets judged based on one thing and one thing only. Does it confirm what I already believe? The message would get instantly dismissed by 99.9% of the population as a hoax, but it would be accepted with the fire of 1,000 suns by a small minority. The people who are already inclined to believe in conspiracies, in hidden knowledge, in prophecies. It would be the ultimate confirmation bias. And right there, in that instant, you've created a massive social schism, a deep, violent crack in the foundation of society. You have the believers and the non-believers. And it wouldn't be a polite disagreement. The believers would see this as the ultimate truth, a divine revelation. They'd form cults, new religions, new political movements. They would see themselves as the chosen ones, the recipients of a sacred text. And they would see everyone else as blind, ignorant, and maybe even as an enemy to be overcome. The message itself, whatever its original intent was, becomes irrelevant almost immediately. The document calls it the sociology of reception. It doesn't matter what the sender meant. It only matters how the receiver interprets it. Let's say the benevolent custodian sent a message to prevent a pandemic. It's a purely scientific message. Here is the genetic code of a virus that will emerge in 20 years. Start working on a vaccine now. A religious group could get a hold of that and call it a divine prophecy of a cleansing plague. A government could call it a piece of disinformation from a rival country and use it to justify a war. A conspiracy theorist could call it proof of a secret cabal that's planning to release the virus themselves. The message becomes a Rorschach test, a mirror reflecting back the hopes and fears of whoever reads it. It becomes the most powerful piece of fake news in human history. Its novelty, its emotional weight, would make it go viral in a way we can't even imagine. And because you can't prove it or disprove it, it can be twisted and weaponized by anyone for any purpose. The future's noble attempt to save us could inadvertently trigger an information apocalypse, a holy war based on misinterpretations of a message nobody can verify. The cure could be infinitely worse than the disease it was meant to prevent. And this all leads to the final, and maybe the most important piece of the puzzle. The ethics of it all. Is it ever, under any circumstances, the right thing to do? This is where it gets really heavy. The core argument against doing anything is what they call moral risk. Because of the butterfly effect, any change you make to the past, no matter how well-intentioned, carries the risk of causing unimaginable downstream harm. And the most profound risk is that you could erase people from existence. Trillions of people. Everyone who is alive in the future, everyone in your present, exists because of a precise, unbroken chain of events going all the way back. Your parents had to meet. Their parents had to meet. If you prevent World War I, you save millions of lives. That seems like a clear moral good. But you also erase all the people who were born because of that war. All the families that were formed. All the love stories that happened in its aftermath. Are their lives worth less than the ones you saved? You're not just saving people. You're trading them. You're engaging in a kind of retrospective genocide without even knowing who you're wiping out. Is preventing a life from happening the same as ending one? That's a question that can tie your brain in a knot. From the perspective of the future society, they're facing a choice that could be seen as an act of mass murder against their own population, all to save a bunch of long-dead ancestors. The classic ethical frameworks just fall apart here. If you're a utilitarian, you believe in doing the greatest good for the greatest number. But you can't do that calculation if the consequences are fundamentally unknowable. You're not a moral calculator. You're a moral gambler, betting the entire casino on a single roll of the dice. If you're a deontologist, someone who believes in ironclad moral rules, you might just say there's a prime directive: do not interfere, period. The timeline is sacred, and you have no right to touch it. It's the ultimate expression of humility. So what does it all boil down to? You're left with a few possible scenarios for what the future might do. You have the benevolent custodians, the heroes who are so full of compassion that they take the ultimate risk to save us, but in doing so, they might doom us all to some unforeseen chaotic hellscape, or even erase themselves. Then you have the timeline predators, the selfish bastards who see history as their personal playbook to enrich themselves, and they'll probably miscalculate and accidentally wipe themselves out in the process. Or maybe, just maybe, the most likely outcome is the third option: the cautious observers, the society that has this incredible power but is so paralyzed by the risk, so aware of the catastrophic potential, that they do nothing. They choose not to act. They might believe in that self-consistent timeline, where any message they send was already received, so the only safe thing to do is to send the messages that history already recorded they sent, creating these weird, closed loops of information with no origin. They become participants in history, not authors of it. They choose safety over change. But that has its own risk, doesn't it? A society that eliminates all risk, that chooses perfect safety and stagnation, might lose the very thing that makes us human. The struggle, the ambition, the drive to make things better. They might become so safe that they just fade away. So it leaves you with this one, final, insane question. Imagine it's you. You're sitting in a chair in front of a console. There's one button on it. You have the power to send one, single, 140-character message to any point in the past. You've seen all the horrors of history, all the suffering. And you have this chance, this one shot, to fix something, to make it right. Do you push the button? Do you take the godlike gamble of rewriting the source code of reality, knowing that your one little tweak could lead to a paradise or an inferno, and you have no way of knowing which? Or do you get up, walk away from the console, and let history play out, with all of its beauty and all of its horror, exactly as it did? It's a heavy one, man. A real heavy one. Makes you think. And here's a final thought to really bake your noodle. We've been talking this whole time about whether they should send a message to us. But what if they already did? What if the timeline we're living in right now is the edited version? All the weird forks in the road of history, the strokes of genius, the so-called miracles. What if those were just the ripples from their message? What if our reality is nothing more than the story that someone in the future decided to write? Chew on that. See you next time.